the 2024 election as a significant source of stress in an annual poll from the American Psychological Association. More than 2/3 has a significant source of stress. Also, 85% of millennials responding to a 2021 survey said that how a potential date votes is extremely or very important to them. 85%. How you, not a spouse, a date. Like going on a date with someone. Like steady dating. It didn't specify. All right. And among college students, 71% of Democrats and 31% of Republicans said that they would not go out on a date with someone who voted for the opposing presidential candidate. Those are done from the USA Today and another think tank of some sort. So those are just obviously the statistics, right? But politics has a tendency to divide. And there was a podcaster, he's another minister, he said that our cultural context determines our perspective. So essentially, our cultural context, that means, okay, where you were born, your parents, where you went to school, what state you grew up in, maybe what country you grew up in. Who here is not from New Hampshire originally? Just quick raise a hand. Oh, wow. Who's from New Hampshire originally? All right, is anybody not from the U.S.? Someone grew up in another country? Okay, so we have three. Yeah, we have three. All right, so obviously, I'm pretty sure myself, Zenny, and Meg going to have a different perspective, right? Because we didn't even grow up here versus someone who grew up here, right? That's our cultural context, and it influences how we view things, whether you know that consciously or not. So basically, where you stand, that's another quote, depends on where you sit. Like what's influenced your mindset. So talking about the election, got a question for you. Are you willing to value your politics through the filter of your faith rather than create a version of your faith that supports your politics?
Ask that again.
So, are you willing to evaluate your politics through the filter of your faith rather than create a version of your faith that supports your politics? That's another minister who asked that question. But something to think about, right? Just to be consciously aware of, number one, your faith, but also your presuppositions, like your cultural context. Was that influence how you view things? There's another term talks about, I think a sociologist talks about like ethnocentrism. And basically, like we filter everything through our cultural context. We have a tendency to do that. And the less conscious you're aware of your ethnocentric viewpoint, the less you're going to be aware of how you filter things through your presuppositions. Your presupposition may be correct. I'm not saying that they're wrong. But just to be aware of what has influenced you as a person is going to give you a more objective viewpoint when you read anything, politics or anything in general. So just to keep in mind as Christians, of course, this was when I was a high school teacher, I did this activity. So I loved it every year. So I'll tell them, we're not going to do it by the way, but I will tell my students, hey, you'll be assigned one of the political parties, either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. You're going to create a platform where you are basically telling the class why this political platform party is a better option for the future United States. But you cannot, under any circumstance, I will tell them, allow to express your policies, like your personal policies. You're supposed to present their political viewpoint. Every single time. They would joke or like come through. And I wish to this day that I put it in the, what's it called, your the rubric, all right? If you do that, it's an automatic fail. If I do it again, I'm going to fail you if you, because the whole point is just present objectively, but it's so difficult. It's so difficult to present something objectively when you already have a strong opinion about it. All right, so just to keep in mind, right, that Paul told the church in Philippi, like, our citizenship is where? Ultimately. It's in heaven. Like, ultimately as Christian, our citizenship is in heaven. So, in Jesus, and Brian alluded to this, Cam alluded to this, we can be one. So if you go to John chapter 17, I'm going to read a scripture that hopefully can guide our hearts, our thoughts, our discussions, our perspectives, our emotions as we navigate the world. All right, John 17, starting in verse 9. Of course, this is a long discourse, right? Jesus have this long discourse with his disciples, and he's praying for the disciples. This is one of his longest prayers for the disciples. And he says this in verse 9, talking about his disciples. I pray for them. I'm not praying for the world, but for those you've given me, for they are yours. All I have is yours, and all you have is mine. And glory has come to me through them. I'll remain in the world no longer, but they're still in the world, and I am coming to you. Holy Father, protect them by the power of your name, the name you gave me, so that they may be one, as we are one. So Jesus, he prayed for us. Like he's praying for all the future believers. He's going to pray for them in the next verse. But for the disciples, he prayed like, let them be one. And think about it, it's like, as we are one, as Jesus and God are one, he prayed for them to be one. Just let that marinate a little bit. Like how that type of intimacy. Then down in verse 20, it says, my prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who believe me through their message. That would be us. That all of them may be one, Father, just as you're in me and I in you. May they also be in us, that the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one. I in them and you in me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Then the world will know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. So he goes on to pray for the future believers, right? He's saying that may they be one and may they come to complete unity. So Jesus prayed for all believers to be one into complete unity. And in Greek, that word to be at complete unity is teleos. It can also mean to make perfect, to complete, to carry through completely, to accomplish, to finish, to bring to an end. So it has this idea that Jesus praying for them to come, like it's this progressive thing towards completion, towards fulfillment, like to become one and to have this complete unity. And for those who are married, just that with your spouse sometimes be a little challenging, right? To be unified, right? And then you add Russ in the mix. You know?
That would be a disaster.
You add Ty, right? You add Matt. You add Rob. Aaron, Steve, right?
Yeah.
Complete unity. That's what he prayed for. That's his exact words, to be complete unity. So Jesus prays to be that we one and that we have unity. And that word one in Greek, guess what? It means one, right? It means one. It's like a numerical number that means one. But it has this idea that it implies unity and a singularity of purpose. So if you bring these two things together, like he prays to be one into complete unity, is the idea that we have one purpose, like an overarching purpose. And then you think of unity, unity implies that there's more than what? More than one part, right? So unity implies that there's more than one entity or more than one thing or person or factor. But in unity, it's like you're able to set aside your differences and still be unified. And someone said pride, right? Unity definitely requires humility. Of course, so-and-so is a better, right, fill in the blank. But you're able to set aside that and say, you know, we have a higher purpose, a higher goal, so we're going to stay unified. And like I mentioned, like, I do believe if you want to have this type of unity, you need some type of conscious awareness. That just means like you have some knowledge, right, of something that can help you. Like, okay, I understand. This is what Jesus prayed for. That's. But then you need some conviction too, because it's going to be challenging. Someone mentioned the media, all the stuff that we're bombarded with on a daily basis, and it requires humility. I think also godliness to understand, like, no, this is what I'm called to be. I thought there was something really, really fascinating. Reading this book, and they talk about metacognition. And all it means is thinking about thinking. And basically what the research showed was that people tend to think that when you're looking for a partner, the more similar, the better the option that you're going to be happy together. The research actually showed that's wrong. Okay? Differences complementarity is actually better than similarity. The more similar, the less likely you're going to be happy together. But if you're complementarian, like you actually are different, you're going to be happy together. Think about the church. I mean, I think someone mentioned it, right? How diverse the church, it always has been diverse. Even in this room, right? Age and where we're from, and like we raised our hands, right? How we think about anything, right? We're very different. And we are supposed to be complementarian. So again, Jesus prayed for us to be one. And Jesus prayed for us to have this one purpose, right? And be unified about this one purpose. So you think about like our one purpose that's our end goal. That's our ultimate end goal. It's always to honor God, to live in alignment with God, and to have a mindset of like our citizenship is ultimately in heaven. Think about like, what is our purpose, right? And I had this question to myself, like, why does it always gotta be about love? Like you hear some of these songs, right? If you hear last Sunday we were in Manchester, right? But we talk about unity and all the love songs are about love. Like it's always about love. And go to John 13, as you read a scripture there, as you think about this purpose that we have as Christians. All right, John 13. If you remember the context here in John 13, Jesus is in the upper room about to pass with his disciples, right? And he teaches them the extent of his love. He washes their feet. And Peter's like, no, never wash my feet. And Jesus says, if I don't do it, you have no part in me. And then he kind of goes on to teach them about this love. In verse 34, it says, a new command I give you, love one another. Oh, okay, we can do that. We can do that. We can love one another, right? Can I get some affirming yeses? Okay, yes. All right, we can. All right. As I've loved you, so you must love one another. And again, like think about like, as I've loved you, Jesus says, the way I love you, you're supposed to love one another. By this, everyone will know that you're my disciples, if you love one another. Love and the power of love. That's our purpose. Like that's what compels us. The love that Jesus had for us, and we're in response when we're connected to Jesus. And sometimes it's difficult, right, to love people the way Jesus loved us on a sustainable basis. But it comes from Jesus, right? So, the Greek word agape, which is the word love, they have different words for love, but that's what often used here in the New Testament. It's like this unconditional love. It's not based on feelings, emotions. It's not eros, like romantic love. Like it's not filial, like brotherly love. It's a action love. It's an action word. Like even if I don't like you, I'm gonna treat you with love. Like it's that type of love. I'm gonna treat you the way Jesus wants me to treat you. Right? It's used 8 times in chapters 1 through 12, and it's used 31 times in chapters 13 to 17. So Jesus talks about it over and over again. Love, 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 love. Over and over and over and over again. So you think about God's kingdom, okay? It's about changing countries, states, kingdoms, or is it about changing people? What was Jesus' approach when he established his kingdom? One by one, changing people's hearts. And Jesus taught us to pray for God's kingdom to come. Lord's Prayer, thy kingdom come. It's not a certain country, but like, man, this country is, no, it's people. Like God in people, transforming people. If you think about the books of the Bible, we just finished the book of Nehemiah. Think a lot of the books in the Old Testament, they're written at a time when the Jews are where? Exile. In exile or captivity or what'd you say? There's messing up, sure, absolutely, yes. A lot of times they're under an empire. Assyria, Babylon, Persia, then you have Greece, and then you have Roman Empire. And Jesus tells the Jews, hey, in John 8, when he tells them, like, you're slave. We'll never be slave to anyone. Really? Egypt, you remember? But a lot of the books are written when they were actually being oppressed, right? And that happens the same thing to the New Testament. Then you have the church being established in the New Testament. And you see the church, when Jesus told Peter, like, I'm going to establish this church and nothing going to overcome it. And the church stayed unified and it's maintained. And all these other kingdoms fell, including the Roman Empire. And it's interesting when you look at Constantine. For those of you remember Constantine, he was the first Roman Empire who legalized first all religions, and then he made Christianity a state religion. So the official religion of the Roman Empire. And that was, a lot of scholars think that was like the first bad decision. Well, not the bad. The first thing that happened when the church kind of lost its purity in a sense. Because if you became a Christian in the first 3 centuries, you're more likely to be persecuted. And there's pretty high likely you can lose your life for being a Christian. All of a sudden, being Christian is like, everybody's a Christian now. Like, we're a Christian nation. And the churches started getting nice buildings. And I think we talked about this before. But like, Constantine did that. And you have this, you see kind of the church really start to struggle with the purity of the gospel. Now that you have the government involved, the state involved, leaders involved, and money involved, and buildings, and all that's wonderful things, right? And Jesus says in John 18, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews. But now my kingdom is from another place. His kingdom is not of this world. It's a different kingdom. In this kingdom, we're compelled by love. Love is what holds us together. And there's when you think of Christianity, and if you want to do this on your own, you can look at historical study and see just the power of love and the power of the church. Okay, and even non-Christian scholars, historians, all agree about this because it's a historical fact what Christians did. They were so different how they treated people, how they treated the outcasts, how they treated the marginalized, how they loved people versus the people around them at that time. And this is from a book called A Brief History of Thought. All right, and he says this: Christianity was to introduce the notion that humanity was fundamentally identical, that men were equal in dignity, an unprecedented idea at the time. Okay? And one to which our world owes its entire democratic inheritance. Our whole Western world is shaped on the Christian.
So now I am giving you a new command.
There it is. Thank you. All right. Our whole Western way of thinking is based on Christianity. Like, democracy is based on Christianity. That people are what? They're equal. Your vote matters, right? Democracy means government by the people. The whole idea is that people equal. Before that, you had the aristocracy, right? That's hierarchy. You're born into a class, and that's class you're going to stay in. You can never become a king. You can never become an elected official. Never. You're from that class. Never. You're peasant. Christianity said, no. We're equal. Equality among humanity. It was completely different. So you think about love, which Jesus says, that's what it's all about. That's how people know that you're my disciple. Love one another. You know, Joe is not here. He's in there with the kids, but he's a big fan of C.S. Lewis. And he said, you cannot make men good by law. And without good men, you can have a good society. You cannot make men good by law, saying you can't do this, you can't do that. And without good men, transformation, you can have a good society. A new command I give you, love one another. And Jesus really embodied this, right? Think about the 12 apostles, right? In that group, you had, what were some of the political ideologies in that group?
Zealot.
One was a zealot. And what's a zealot?
Wants to kill everybody else.
Extremist.
Yeah, and specifically, who did the zealot want to take out? The Roman Empire. So the people that Jesus chose, right, that were a former zealot. The zealot was like, it's almost like, think of a terrorist, just to kind of get the picture. Very zealous to take a Roman Empire by force. Okay? Then they also had who? Who else did it? What was all their political backgrounds? Tax collector. So how did a Jew view a tax collector?
Worse than a zealot.
Worse than a zealot, right? A traitor to the Jewish nation. Because he worked with the Roman Empire. And they're together, dipping bread with Jesus, you know. And he says, as I've loved you, So we must love one another. Like the opposite end of the spectrum. Together in the church. Because of love, because of higher command. So, let me give you a practical, something to take with your practical, okay? You ready for this? Yep. This is maybe, check my time real quick. All right, so, whether it's politics or anything in general, have you ever noticed you can get triggered by people?
No.
All right. So, you maybe get triggered by your kids sometimes, maybe. All right, maybe you get triggered by your coworkers, for those of you who have your own company, maybe. Or maybe if you work for a boss, you get triggered by your boss. Or maybe you get triggered by your teacher, for those who are in school. Or you get triggered by your neighbor. Anybody? Okay, so all right, me and Genevieve, we're the only one, okay? But we've been triggered by some people. The rest of you guys, okay, just help us out, okay? So we tend to be triggered by one another, right? So think about politically, right? I can't believe that person is a Democrat. I can't believe that person is a Republican. How could they? I'm not talking about just politics, but I'm not talking about politics only, but in general, that person calls himself a Christian. We get triggered, right? Yep. What was the adjective used to most describe Jesus? Maybe it's not adjective. I think it is. Plain? Friend of sinners? Maybe it's not adjective. Word. What word did it say about Jesus? He had what? Loving, yes. Patience, yes. Charisma, yes. All right. All right. He had compassion. Okay. If you look it up, I think it's maybe the English word adjective is not the right, but the point is like the way he's described, he had compassion on people. He had compassion on all people. Okay, so all right, one more thing. Hopefully you can follow me. Hopefully it's not too much, but so. All right, neuro-linguistic programming. They study the mind, okay? So if you cut open your brain, do you see the mind? No. Do we have a mind? Yes, we have a mind, okay? They study how the mind works, but you can't see it. Pretty deep. So what they say, okay, with when it comes to study the mind, all right, they have a I guess it's a belief, and that is when it comes to the mind, okay? Everybody's mind is operating the best way currently knows how. Okay, everybody's doing the best to know with what they have currently. That does not mean what they're doing is right. Morally, ethically, financially, spiritually. They may be way off. They may be evil. But there's something going on that's how they're operating. It's where they're at currently. All right, and maybe this is, I'm trying to put this together, maybe, I wonder like how could Jesus look at people like the sinful woman or anybody? He's God, he looks at them and he's still able to love them. I'm wondering, was Jesus able to understand, like, I don't agree with what you're doing in your life right now. It's wrong, but I have compassion for you. Because I understand that's where you are right now. With the disciples, like, that's where you are. I'm meeting you where you are. I'm loving you here. I know this is where I want you to go, but you're here. He understood, like, they're doing the best they can currently. Doesn't mean he's right. And he was able to have compassion. I think if we are able to, just in general, like, because you're called to love one another and people and everybody, right, as Jesus, to not be so triggered. Because you know, like, when you're triggered, right, whether it's, obviously talking about the election, but it could be anything. Like, is it to be so triggered all the time? Who likes to walk around like that? Like, it's just trigger. But like, if you can, no, they're doing the best they can. I don't agree with it. May not be right based on the scriptures or any objective morality, but I can have compassion because that's what they need. For example, our daughter, she's in school, and girls that are 10-year-olds sometimes, they can be girls that are 10-year-olds, and then she shares stuff. Well, this girl did this, and inside, I feel, you don't know what I feel, because it's not right. This is a 10-year-old girl, and I feel mad. How dare you treat my daughter like that? That's what I feel like doing. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like as dad, man, I'm gonna go up in that school, I'm gonna take a go up against them. Oh, see? Like, that's what I feel, right? Like, and I'm like, hold up. She's a 10-year-old girl. What is she, if she's acting out, think about it. If there's a girl who's very, typically tends to act out, what does that girl probably have going on? Challenges. Maybe at home. Maybe dad's not there. Maybe mom's not there. Maybe there's tension. Maybe who knows? What she needs, if me go on there and think I'm going to, tape against the wall, it's like she needs compassion. Because that's where she's at. So when I kind of flip and think like, I need to pray for her. I don't need to go up in there, this is being recorded, so I gotta be careful what I say. But, in my mind, right? Ungodly thoughts, right? She needs compassion. And that's what Jesus has for people. And that's what he has for us. And if we can extend that, I think, number one, it diffuses a lot of stuff, but also for you on the inside, right? Because we can't control what people think or do. So why be so affected by it? But I think if you can flip that thing, like, man, like, I think the way Jesus viewed people with compassion, if you can see people with compassion, anybody, politics, or what type of sport they watch, or what store they go to. I'm not sure about Target. That's a hard one for me. Why people go to Target. Walmart's just the other side of the street. Pretty much the same thing. That's the inside joke, okay? Between two people in the room. All right, so to finish up, we're going to take communion here, okay? And I want to share a scripture from Mark 10. All right, so Mark 10, before you take communion together. So Mark 10, and this is a story about the rich young ruler, as it's called, right? So this man, he comes up to Jesus and he says, he falls on his knees. He says, good teacher, what must I do to enter eternal life? Why do you call me good, Jesus? And I said, no one is good except God alone. You know the commandments. You shall not murder, you shall not steal, commit adultery, give false testimony, defraud, honor your father and mother. He says, I've done all these things since a little boy. I've done everything. Remember, those are the first 5. There's 5 more. And it says, Jesus looked at him and loved him. I thought, like, what? He looked at him and he loved him. As you take communion, I want you to meditate on that. Like, Jesus, he looks at you and he loves you. He looks at the Democrat, he loves them. He looks at the Republican, he loves him. He looks at the mean little girl, he loves her. He looks at the minister who has a really bad heart towards a mean little girl, and he loves her. He looks at the spouse who's who's shopping at Target, right? He loves her, right? But he looks at you and loves you with compassion. And to be reminded of that as we go out and live for Jesus and love people the way he loved us. So with that, I'm going to pray and